on my own farm? Does that make it a nuisance? Animal intestinal waste, doesn't that just mean animal droppings? I mean, come on, that's no big deal.
Mike, do a study on this law. It protects all that as long as you're following, those practices. You're doing certain things, and then this act is so beautiful. It was written very broad and inclusive. There's no size limitation. It was intentionally written like this to protect everyone. Now, you have to be a farm. What is a farm? It's someone who actually sells something. So all you got to do is put a little sign out front, eggs for sale. You become a farm.
Well, CJ, but remember, you're citing law. You're citing state law, just as we could cite the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, but now these tyrants that exist today, they say those laws don't matter. We're going to do whatever we want because we can, because we have the guns, because we're the government tyrants. They just nullify all your laws, ignore it, and go ahead and seize your ranch and farm and make you look like a criminal anyway. What do you say about that, CJ?
Exactly. But you know what? And everyone says, oh, forget about it. You know what? I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight for my rights, because if you don't, you lose your rights.
Absolutely.
And the thing is about this law is it has in the act, if someone calls on you 3 times and the inspector comes out and sees you're following the guidelines, after that, then they become charged. So
wow, okay.
We're
almost out of time, CJ. Sorry to cut you off there. You sound like a really awesome guy. Thanks for bringing up that point. That's what we need, is state right to farm laws, state to state across the whole country. A lot more straight ahead here on the Alex Jones Show. Stay with us. We'll be right back. There is breaking news today about a new microchip technology that can locate you to within centimeters, not just on the XY grid, but vertically as well. So in other words, if you have one of these chips in your cell phones, they will know what floor of an apartment building at which you are residing. This is by Paul Joseph Watson, posted on Infowars.com right now. And it's being linked to by Matt Drudge over at thedrudgereport.com. So I want to thank Matt for that link. The title is New Microchip Knows Your Location to Within Centimeters. Forget a chip in your forehead. The mark of the beast is the cell phone, by Paul Joseph Watson. And the MIT Technology Review reports, quote, Broadcom has just rolled out a chip for smartphones that promises to indicate location ultra precisely, possibly within a few centimeters, vertically and horizontally, indoors and out. It even, they're saying that this will be useful for shopkeepers and retailers to know when you're walking by, so they can then hit you with their personalized advertising messages. Didn't we see what was the movie that this was made famous by with Tom Cruise? Was it a Philip K. Dick? Minority Report. That's right. That was in Minority Report. So now, of course, you got to ask, well, how would this retailer know what your preferences are? Well, because you've been surfing the internet and Google cookies have been tracking everything you search for and everything you visit. And therefore, if they share that with brick and mortar retailers, and they can then know your profile the minute you walk by. Wouldn't that be weird? Like you're on the internet one day searching for storable food and MREs, and then you're walking through the mall with your new microchip cell phone, and all of a sudden a billboard in front of you shows an ad, MREs on sale for long-term preparedness and survival. And you say, whoa, wait a minute, how did they know that? That's the kind of invasion of privacy that we're talking about being made possible by these microchips. Not to mention the ability for local police to locate you and have you arrested for whatever reason they might come up with. And by the way, we are going to have an interview coming up in the third hour with attorney Dale Carson, the author of Arrest Proof Yourself, who gives you tips and strategies for avoiding being arrested, how to handle confrontations with police in a way that keeps your butt out of jail, basically is what that's all about. You know, don't escalate things, for one thing. But they could use this microchip to find you and come arrest you. So let's say you milk your goat, and you have your milk on the internet for sale. I'm going to sell milk to people within the zip code or within the city. They could then use your cell phone chip to come find you arrest you, throw you in jail, and have you tortured and chained up and shackled as a, quote, sovereign citizen because you're crazy to think that you should be able to milk your own goats and offer that milk for sale or trade to your neighbors. Pretty amazing, isn't it? Now, coming up, just after this next break, which is still a few minutes away, we're going to have an interview with Mark Baker. He is the Michigan pig farmer whose entire herd was threatened by the Department of Natural Resources bureaucrats in the state of Michigan. They threatened to actually come in and just shoot all the pigs. Just open fire on your livestock, even though they're in your fences, they're in your farm. You've been farming them for 5 or 6 years. Some of these guys out there in Michigan have been farming for 10, 20 years, the same kind of breeds. The state just wants to come in and open fire and use your livestock as target practice. Doesn't make any sense, does it? But that's what's happening. So we're going to talk to Mark Baker about that. But before we get to that, I've got a comment about Michigan. What is wrong with Michigan bureaucrats? What is wrong with these people? Remember, this is where Julie Bass was threatened with jail time for growing a garden in Oak Park, Michigan. Remember that town? And in fact, Alex Jones and InfoWars helped publicize that information and get all the charges dropped against Julie Bass. We also had the case of Marianne Godboldo in Detroit. Remember, the Detroit mom who refused to medicate her child, and she was assaulted by a SWAT team. And guess who spoke out for Marianne Godboldo in addition to her local community? Yeah, a couple of white guys. Myself and Alex Jones, Natural News and InfoWars, were two of the biggest alternative news sources actually covering that story. So, you know, there's just another example of how we speak out for African Americans when we see injustice. So anybody out there who thinks that InfoWars or Alex is racist, or if they think I'm racist, forget it. We stand up for liberty and justice for people of all races and colors and religions and backgrounds. Just consistently. I can't stand injustice no matter who it's being waged against. And in that case, Marianne Godboldo was being set up and SWAT teamed out of completely irrationally by the state. Now, what else is happening in Michigan? This state just seems to be losing its mind when it comes to farmers. So we're going to talk to Mark Baker about that in more detail and try to get a sense of what's happening in Lansing there and why these bureaucrats are running rampant over the rights of citizens. But it's about more than just food and farms. It's about state bureaucrats could come to your door and your house at any time and take away your children if you don't agree to have them vaccinated or medicated in the way that the state wants you to. All that straight ahead on the Alex Jones Show. Stay with us. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, and we'll be right back after this quick message. Stay with us.
We're on the march. The empire's on the run.
Coming up in just a couple of minutes, we've got Mark Baker from bakersgreenacres.com. He is the Michigan pig farmer whose livestock has been threatened by the state of Michigan. Excuse me. But before that, we've got something fun for you here. You know that we've had this big discussion about SSRIs and psychiatric drugging of soldiers and all of that going on. It's a big deal. And finally, people are waking up to it. Back in 2009, I wrote a song called SSR Lies. And in the spirit of the creativity that goes on here at InfoWars, where Alex does his parodies and the whole crew, they're super talented, a bunch of musicians here, super creative crew. I wanted to play for you about 45 seconds of that song while we're getting our guest online, so that you can hear some of what I was talking about back in 2009 that is now becoming more mainstream. So go ahead and cue that song for a little bit. All right, so some of the words there, you got to take your life back, put the knife back down, throw the medication on the ground, because those medical suckers are going to psych that. And if you're speaking your mind, they're going to strike that. Those are the words of what you just heard there. It might have been a little hard to make out from the song because I wasn't really using that great of a microphone back in 2009. But you know, that's what we've got to get to in this country. We've got to de-escalate the violence. We've got to de-escalate the race war. We've got to get the drugs out of people's minds, stop the fluoride poisoning of America, stop the GMO poisoning of our crops, stop the electromagnetic poisoning of our brains. We've got to be able to retain the consciousness and the awakening and the basic love for humanity and love for life that's going to give us a future in this world. And that means throwing the medication away. You know, Whitney Houston could probably still be alive today if she wasn't using all those psychiatric psychiatric drugs or painkillers in her case. Heath Ledger is another Hollywood legend who was killed by an overdose of FDA-approved prescription drugs. It's a very long list. Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, Michael Jackson, their deaths were all caused in part or entirely by FDA-approved painkillers and prescription drugs. That is the epidemic that's really haunting us in America today. Now, joining us to continue our conversation about farming in America is Mark Baker from bakersgreenacres.com. He is the Michigan pig farmer that we mentioned earlier. Mark, are you with us right now?
I'm here, Mike.
Thank you, Mark, for joining us today, man. It's great to hear from you. You're a very courageous American. Just want to give a quick background. You're an Air Force veteran. You've been a farmer there in Michigan for, what, 5 or 6 years, something around that time?
About 8. I got out of the service in 2004.
Okay, 8 years. Okay, I didn't know that. So on April 1, you were there at your farm thinking, oh my goodness, the state is going to come slaughter my herd. What actually happened that night before April 1 when that regulation was going to kick in?
Well, we got tipped off on Friday that they were coming, and I called my lawyer, and he made a few phone calls, and apparently the Attorney General in Michigan stepped in and said that there would not be any movement against us until our court case is settled. So I had some reassurance, but there's a bit of a trust issue with these guys, so I moved my family off Saturday afternoon anyway, just as a precaution. And then I stood from 12 to 12 the next day waiting, and they didn't show.
All right, so you could still be raided at any time under this invasive species order that the DNR in Michigan has actually put into place, correct? They haven't?
Yeah, I suppose so. I don't see any concrete block to keep them from doing what they want to do. They've said they won't, or the Attorney General has said that he's restrained them, but
isn't this like Obama signing the NDAA that quote, legalizes secret arrest and secret torture and detainment of American citizens and then saying, well, I won't use it? Isn't that similar to what's really happening to you in Michigan?
It's very similar. Very similar.
So they want to claim they have this power over you, but then they say they will selectively restrain it in your case because you went public, you made a YouTube video, you have a family that it looks nice on YouTube. They don't want to obviously be seen as raiding your farm. But what about all your other friends and neighbors and farmers? Are they afraid of being raided?
Not only are they afraid of it, but they're being aggressively searched as we speak. DNR has shown up at a friend of ours, Ron McKendrick, up in Sheboygan, and tried to get on his farm to inspect it. What they're looking for is probable cause. And he told them, no, get a warrant. Well, they came back the next day, and then they trespassed illegally. They had binoculars, and they were looking out onto his property to see if they could see something.
So they're surveilling his farm?
Yeah, and then they parked down the road. I guess I'm told it was 2 trucks, and they were there for 2 days.
You would think that they would have something better to do to stake out actual terrorists, if you can even find any in America.
I suppose, but this is the DNR. They are supposed to be just protecting the wild animals out in the woods and clearing trails and things like that.
Well, let me ask you this, Mark. Well, first of all, let me give out your website, bakersgreenacres.com, for those who want to read your blog, who want to see your videos, your ongoing updates, and so on. But I want to ask you, as a United States Air Force veteran, someone who put your effort, your life, your time on the line to help protect America and its values and its freedoms, and now here you are being subjected to the threat of having your animals killed at gunpoint by the state in which you are a resident. How does that make you feel?
I think it's a disgrace. And I think the state government here should really be ashamed of what they're allowing to have happen to their citizens.
It seems to me that there's got to be more to this also, because it's not just that they're going to back off selectively in your case. That law is still on the books. Those bureaucrats have conspired to threaten you and destroy your property and destroy your livelihood, in essence. Isn't that a crime, or shouldn't it be a conspiracy to destroy the livelihood of an honest, hardworking farmer?
Well, yeah, in reality it is. They've leveled a